we're not brave enough to have those moments of mystery and intrigue. We just want it all out there, front and center, all the time.
This holiday season, marketers are facing their biggest decisions at a point of maximum pressure. Delivery fatigue and budget crunch are real, and it's leading to complacency around creative effectiveness in digital marketing, and that could make or break campaigns. So, what can you do about it? Well, you should read the automated creative white paper called Compounding Creative, an urgent Q4 wake-up call. So you can get this on this bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/Q4 Xmas 2023. So that is bit.ly, that's lowercase, then / capital Q, number 4, capital X, capital M, capital A, capital S, and then 2023. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, the creative effectiveness ad tech platform. And every week I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing our industry's leaders about their vision for the future of that industry. And this week is no different. I'm on a call with Rebecca McCowan, who is design lead for Europe at the Coca-Cola Company. So Rebecca, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, could you give the audience a bit of background?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca McCowan. And as Tom said, I'm the design lead for Coca-Cola for Europe. And basically my very small but mighty team, we are looking after all the visual identity and branding for the entire Coca-Cola portfolio across Europe. So that includes things you guys all know, like Coke, Fanta, Sprite, and lots of things you might not know, like juices, dairies, waters, et cetera, et cetera. So the list goes on. So yeah.
I'm assuming you didn't arrive in that job as your first gig out of school. What did you do in between then and now?
In between then. So funny enough, I always set out to be a lawyer. And then I found I couldn't quite bring myself to take the entrance exams to law school. And there was this nagging feeling that I needed to do something more creative. So to make a very long story short, I ended up at design school in Atlanta. And then from there, I moved to work at an agency in Chicago. About 7 months later, I was laid off with the entire junior design department. And I felt a little ballsy and opened my own little thing with a fellow laid off designer. And we did that for about 3 years. And then ultimately, I found myself in a position where I couldn't pay my rent. So I went and got a job, and I was a designer at a restaurant and entertainment company. And I was there for about 3 or 4 years. And then it was a really nasty snowstorm where there was snow up to my shoulders, and I still had to go to work. It was hard to get to work. I couldn't get to work, but I still had to go to work. And I was like, this is not for me. So I convinced my husband to move to a warmer climate, and we ended up back in Atlanta, and I was working for Coca-Cola. And from there, then we came to Austria.
Of course.
That was long.
Yeah, and it's a shame. We originally planned to do this podcast at your place. I think I was going to get the train from Budapest, and it was going to be this like dreamy, cool, trans-European thing. Oh, it didn't happen. We're doing on a Zoom call. But there you go. Maybe next time. So first question, what have you become better at saying no to in your career?
So I have become better at saying no to bad briefs, or just challenging the briefs that I get that come across my desk. I think that too many people in marketing and in the world where I work think that design exists just to make things pretty. And I do think that aesthetics are very important, because as humans, we love beautiful things. But at the core, design is really about solving problems. So I'll give you an example. I get a lot of briefs where it's like, oh, we need a new look and feel because we need to increase transactions. And it's like, okay, well, that's a business problem. That's not inherently a design problem. And so then we have to dig a little deeper and say, well, why do we need to increase transactions? And it's, oh, well, people aren't buying our product as often as they used to. Well, why aren't they buying our product as often? Oh, well, the price went up. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So if the price went up, then either you can go solve that with the commercial supply chain people, or we can do some assumptions and think that maybe people don't think that they're getting their value for their money when they're buying our product because it's more expensive now. And so maybe this could turn into a design problem, which is we need to elevate the look and feel so that the look of it is matching the price, and then people will feel better about paying a bit more for it. So that is a very black and white example. They are never that that easy to solve, but essentially we get a lot of weird briefs that you have to dig a lot, or that don't really make sense because it's a business problem and not a design problem.
So if someone's writing you a brief, how would you like them to know that they are ready to write you a brief? Because I think what you're describing is someone expressing that they have a problem as opposed to having written you a brief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that is a really fabulous question, because I think a lot of what happens is we just kind of get a brief in an email. Hey, here's a brief for you. Instead of bringing design in very early and having that discussion of, okay, these are the challenges that this brand is facing. Design people, and it doesn't just have to be design people in the room, human insights, digital people, everybody in the room together, kind of trying to tackle the problem together. And eventually you'll find that little nugget where design can play a role. But again, a lot of briefs that come to us are not inherently, there's not a problem with the design, but there's a problem with the business, and the assumption is that design needs to fix it, or design can fix it. And ultimately you just have to keep digging until you understand what the problem is for the person that's interacting with it. If you think about everything around you, it's all been designed at some point. I'm looking at my very cluttered desk at the moment, and I've got some headphones. Well, those were designed because people wanted to be able to listen to music or listen to something while they're walking around. Or I have a plant on my desk, and at some point someone designed this beautiful little pot so that I could bring the outside world in and have a little bit of nature on my desk. So there is a lot of aesthetics in that, but at the core, you're designing for a reason, for a problem.
So one of the things that we've done as a business, and I'd love to get your view on it, you might think this is absolute nonsense, but when I worked at an agency, I went through the process of taking briefs for a pitch. So the company agency and go, so-and-so are looking for a social media agency. Here's the brief for, the RFP for the proposal. And then we do it and then we lose it. And then afterwards to say, well, what you didn't do was ABC. You didn't talk about EFG, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, you didn't put that in the brief, man. So how could we have possibly responded to it? Oh, because you're best mates with the person that won it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we set up Automated Creative, we developed this thing called a collaborative brief, right? So our clients don't write briefs for us. What we do is have a conversation with them, and they go, well, look, what are you trying to do in the next quarter? Like, what we're trying to do is sell this thing or raise awareness of X or get people to consider this thing. And then I go, well, why? Who's the target audience? How do you want to do that? What assets do you have? What's the media budget? A ton of questions. And they just talk to us. and we
Yeah.
record it all, and then we write it down in a brief, and then send it back to them and say, "Is this your brief?" And then they go, "No," and they'll go, "No, actually, it's more about this," or "Actually, here's this bit of data that'll help." So we collaborate from day one, and so there's no them sending me a brief and then me trying to translate that into automated creative language. It's just like, what do you want to do? What are you trying to achieve? Where do you want to get to? And I play that back. But do you think that would help, or is that just a weird thing that we do?
No, I think that's an amazing thing that you do. And I think that collaboration is key. And, this is kind of a separate topic, but I think that our industry is very good at working in silos, and, everybody comes up with an idea and off they run and do it. And nobody's really thinking about things together. It's interesting. I was having a chat with a friend of mine at an agency the other day, and we were talking about this idea of challenging briefs, and they were saying, like, well, Rebecca, because you are internal, you have more of a voice and more of a say to challenge a brief, whereas the agency doesn't always feel so comfortable to challenge a brief. So I love what you guys are doing with this whole kind of collaboration from the very beginning, because I do think that sometimes briefs just kind of get lobbed over the fence to the agency, and then they have to make sense of it. But a big part of my job is getting that original brief, figuring out how design can play a role and what that role is, and then taking that to the design agency. So I'm like the middleman between the marketing brief and the design agency.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we're now going to move on to your top marketing tip. So we don't have many design people on the show, so I'm fascinated to know what is your top marketing tip? What is the thing that you find yourself saying to your teams or colleagues most often?
So I think that in my world, we tend to market to, and this is going to sound maybe rude, but we tend to market to the lowest common denominator. And we feel like if we don't spell it out perfectly clear, that people aren't going to get it. And so we lose that sense of intrigue and wonder, and that sense of surprise and delight. And I think it's really important to let people engage with our brands in a way that lets them learn along the way and not like shouting at them from the very beginning. And I'll give you two examples. Like you might use FedEx to send your packages. And for years and years, you might just appreciate that FedEx gets your things from point A to point B. And then one day, you might notice that adorable little arrow between the E and the X. And suddenly, it's just a whole different experience. It brings a little smile to we say a little smile to your eye, but I think you don't have to notice it in the beginning, but then once you do, you realize it's just a clever, lovely little touch. The same I would say for innocent juice drinks. So again, you can buy an innocent juice, you can drink it, then you can recycle it because that's what you're supposed to do. And you may never notice anything else, and you've had a lovely juice experience. But if you happen to turn the bottle and you look on the back of pack, you'll see just these funny little stories. You'll see the phone number for their banana hotline. And I can tell you, I've seen the banana phone. It exists. And it's just this lovely little interaction that if you as a consumer want to take the time, there's more to see and learn. But if you don't, that's okay. Whereas I feel like in my world, we're not brave enough to have those moments of mystery and intrigue. We just want it all out there, front and center, all the time.
That is wonderful to hear. I'm just looking at the FedEx logo. Never noticed it.
Had you never seen?
Never. No. So, well, I mean, I don't use FedEx if probably once in my life, if ever. So maybe I'm not the guy for that, but that's fantastic. I tell you, who do that really brilliantly is Oatly. We had Michael Lee, who's one of the creative directors there. And I've ever look on the side of a pack of Oatly, it's just this like continual stream of BS, which is just them being cheeky and funny and irreverent.
It's so funny.
And it's like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but what used to be Virgin trains had this sign in the bathroom on the train that said, "Don't flush anything down the toilet, including your hopes and dreams, your ex-girlfriend's jumper." And like, that was funny once, man, 10 years ago. But like, it's even like, they don't own the trains anymore. A different company owns the trains and it's still there. And it's like, oh my God. Like, but whereas Oatly, they constantly refresh the joke. It's like, like some music on it, and the music's about their CEO or something. It's just like so ridiculous. And it's really nice to hear that, because I definitely live in the world of like, get the value proposition right, get the right visual, deliver the outcome that you want. But what you're talking about is almost like a meta level of care that deepens a relationship with a brand. Yeah,
exactly. And it's funny because like I'm working on a project now, and it's for a thing that's happening next summer, and basically we're working with the creative team, and they're doing more of the kind of advertising, campaigning stuff, and design is a bit more about the branding and the foundation. And you know, we're proposing these like out of home billboards and posters and things that are very simple, that just have like one little headline, and it makes you stop and think. Whereas we're getting so much pushback that, no, we have to show the occasion and the call to action and the QR code, and we have to show what packs we're talking about. And it's like, when you put these two things side by side, it's like one is so cluttered, I wouldn't even look at it. And the other one makes me stop and smile. And it's really hard in a world of, you know, call to actions and QR codes and la, 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 to get people to just stop and let people interact with the brand in their own way.
Wow, man. A lot of the work we do is performance advertising. So this is like a really different place for me to be discussing things. I'm like, yeah, of course, get a QR code on it. Get the pack on it.
I know.
Say, have one of those loopy arrows. Say, turn around and head back to say, no, of course not. Right, so we are going to move on now to your shiny new object, which is slow design. I don't know what that is. What is it? Explain slow design to me, and I will try and have a sensible conversation with you about it.
You're going to get it. It's quite simple. And the name was born from, a colleague of mine, she and I came up with this. Her name is Jessica Felby, and she's amazing. And we were talking about this one day, about the idea of like slow food, and the opposite of fast fashion is slow fashion. And we were talking about how in our worlds, everything is done very quickly, and we're almost always starting from scratch. So instead of doing a rebranding once and doing it well and taking the time to do it, we'll do it 4 times and badly and keep needing to reinvent. And so it's just this thought of like, let's take a step back. Let's think about where we want the brand to be in 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and start working towards that. But unfortunately, places like Coca-Cola and a lot of these big FMCGs, we're working on a yearly cycle. So every year we're redoing things that we did the previous year. I'll give you an example. Like Christmas, I don't know if you know this, but Christmas happens every single year. It does. And every single year we start from scratch of, okay, what are we going to do this year for Coke Christmas? Instead of saying, okay, this is the world that Coke Christmas should look and feel like. And every year we're going to build on that. And we're going to bring, instead of starting from scratch, we're going to use 80% of it. And the other 20% is the new and interesting for this year. And it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people within Coke about this, because it does bother me how much we start from scratch. And they're always like, yeah, but consumers need something new. The bottlers need something new. Like, we like shiny and we like new. And I'm like, yeah, we do like shiny and we like new. Like, that, humans, that's what we like. But when you think about Christmas and you think about, putting up your Christmas tree and getting out your ornaments, do you want that experience to be different every single year? Or is there something kind of lovely about the nostalgia of bringing out the same ornaments just for this short period of time and loving it for what it is and not needing to reinvent it every single year?
Well, I'm funny on Christmas though, because I think Christmas is the month that taste forgot, right? You just have a Christmas tree is literally the most ugly thing in the universe, but it looks amazing. Like wrapping paper, Santa Claus. It's just the music. It's the worst music. I can tell you why it's the worst music, because we don't listen to it for the rest of the year. I can tell you why it's the worst food, because we don't eat that food the rest of the time. Mulled wine is the worst way to drink wine. And why do I know that? Because no one drinks it outside of Christmas. It's exactly to your point. It's the awful things make you feel great because there are associations around that thing.
Hang on. You have not been to a Christmas market in Vienna and had the mulled wine here. So I'm afraid.
Do you drink it in June? No, you don't. Like, forget it. It's
disgusting.
It's
not in June. Come on.
It's just, there's an excuse to drink alcohol earlier in the day, which I'm totally on board with. But, we're having a meeting at Coke's office. It's 11 a.m. Mulled wine. It's Christmas. Sure, cool. Let's have it.
Everybody loves it. But on the same note, would you drink like a pina colada at Christmas time?
I'm from the north of England. I'll drink anything.
Fair point.
Anyway, but yes, that's a powerful argument internally to Coke. But it surprises me because I always see Coke as the quintessential Christmas brand. That that's the trucks and the song and big happy Santa Claus smiling and winking at you. Like that feels like it's there every year. But clearly it's not, and it needs to be reinvented apparently. But you're in a sort of roster of like 3 or 4 brands, I guess, that have that kind of a complete 100% awareness and consideration and all that stuff that you can do the same thing over and over again. Or have I been missing some significant campaigns here?
No. So, I mean, to that point, you are right. I mean, every year we do have Santa, we do have the truck. I don't know if the song stays the same. I don't know. But it's interesting how sometimes the Santa changes a little bit. And like this past year, we were working on it, and we have one of the cool things about Coke, and especially when I was living in Atlanta and working for global design, is we had the Coca-Cola archives right there to be able to go explore and check out. And so a lot of times from a design standpoint, again, our goal is to build the brand very slowly and not jump onto these kind of exciting campaigns, but keep the consistent brand. And so we went and found the original Santa that the artist Sunblom had painted. And so we were like, let's go back to this Santa. This is our original Santa. This is basically when Santa really came into his own. I mean, it's pretty much like the Santa we know and love is the Coca-Cola version of Santa. And so we've had lots of Santas over the years, but our push is always, let's go back to the original Santa. That's our dude. And it's funny because this past year we were making a push to like be modern yet still true to our heritage. And some of the other teams were just not buying it, and they wanted like these random like newfangled Santas, and we were like, but no, that's not the Coke Santa. Like, we have to be the Coke Santa. So it is kind of this idea of like staying true to who you are and having moments where you can flex a bit and feel more modern. Did that make sense? I don't know.
It made a lot of sense, and
okay.
I feel like we could discuss this all day, but we can't. We're at time. So Rebecca, if someone wanted to get in touch with you to talk about what's the right kind of Santa, slow design, or any of the other things we've talked about today, where would you like them to get in contact with you? And what kind of message gets you to actually reply?
So they can absolutely find me on LinkedIn, Rebecca McCowan. That's probably the best way to track me down. And what type of message would get me to reply? I think something that feels authentic, that feels like you've spent a minute to write it and that it wasn't written by AI, and it wasn't written for a mass audience that you've now copied and pasted back to me. You know,
nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Take a little time.
Brilliant. Well, look, that was an unusual conversation for this podcast, and thank you for giving me a completely different perspective on our industry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hi. Just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.